Hey there. So, our textbook talks a bit about story structure, and it even gives a diagram of the standard Aristotelian climactic structure. It's on page 52 in your textbook. This kind of construction is most obvious in climactic structure, but it's also evident to one degree or another in many of the other structures that are discussed in the book. This important idea underlies so much of modern Western storytelling, so I'd like to give you a little more detail about it. Fellner's chart isn't wrong, but it's a bit sketchy, and so could be a little misleading. So here's a more detailed diagram that I'm going to discuss. The very first scene of a play is the point of attack. This is where the plot starts. But the story may go back much further. Let's take Romeo and Juliet as an example. It opens with a guy coming out and giving a prologue. He tells us that the Capulets and the Montagues have been fighting for generations. Well, we don't need to see the Capulets and the Montagues on stage fighting for all of those previous generations of conflict. Instead, he gives it to us as exposition. He's telling us, here is the life these folks are living, the life that is now. Then, at some point, we switch from this is the life that is to now this is the day that ... something happens. This is why we're starting the story here. Something unusual happens. Romeo meets Juliet. Tybalt slays Benvolio, whatever it is. We call this the inciting incident. It's what creates the conflict between the protagonist and the antagonist. From this point on, the protagonist wants something. He has an objective. And the antagonist is standing in their way. This is the obstacle. This back and forth tension is what defines the conflict. That's at the heart of all drama. Nobody wants to watch a story about a bunch of happy people who all get along and don't want anything to change. So let's look at an example. Maybe a lot of you have seen The Lion King. So, The Lion King starts with exposition. We find out where it takes place, near Pride Rock. We learn about Mufasa and Sarabi and their child, and Simba, the family, and the circle of life. We learn about his friend Nala and Scar, Simba's uncle. That he has 3 hyenas that follow him around. Then the inciting incident occurs. Scar kills Mufasa and sends Simba away. Now we have steps of rising action. Simba meets Timon and Pumbaa. Scar takes over the Pride Land and starves the population. Nala goes to look for help and finds Simba. And Rafiki helps Simba realize he should go back home and help his family. Those are all steps in rising tension. And then the climax occurs in the big fight scene when Simba kills Scar. Then we have the falling action. Simba reunites with his mom and with Nala. And then the final resolution is when he takes his place as king, marries Nala, and the circle of life is then complete. And there are any number of stories where you can see this structure. This structure is most easy to see in melodramas or movies like Lion King that have simple story construction. Look at Star Wars, the original Star Wars, A New Hope. We have lots of Luke Skywalker just moping around the house, not wanting to be there anymore. This is the life that is. Until one day the stormtroopers come by and kill his parents, his uncle and aunt. And then, boom, all of a sudden, I want to be a Jedi and learn and fight and all of that. And then series of rising actions until he blows up the Death Star at the end. The antagonist is Darth Vader, obviously, and blowing up the Death Star represents a victory over Darth Vader. So I put it to you to think of some of your favorite stories and try to see if this structure fits. Not every structure does, but this is it's the clearest, cleanest type of structure. It asks the least of you in terms of having an audience who has to think and do any work. This story structure does a lot of the work for you. So the thing to take away from this is that the struggle between the protagonist and the antagonist, what the protagonist wants and how the antagonist keeps the protagonist from getting it, is the source of the conflict. And the climax of the play won't happen until that conflict is resolved somehow. So it usually doesn't happen in the middle of the play, because then you wouldn't care about the rest of it. You'd be picking up your stuff and leaving and figuring, okay, the rest is all downhill from here. Don't confuse an emotional scene or a scene that you may find very emotional with the actual story climax. Okay, they could be two different things, although usually the climax is the most intense part of the story. Okay, if you have any questions, don't be afraid to give me a call. Thanks.